Have you ever gone to a theme park like Disney World and you literally are so excited to be there and you have a list of all the rides that you want to ride, right? You get there and the wait in the lines is atrocious. So much so that like you don't even really want to ride the ride anymore. You're like, do I really want to spend 2 hours in this line or do I want to go do other things? Maybe instead you just decide to ride It's a Small World because the line's not long for that ride. But have you ever been in that situation? I mean, people will literally pay hundreds of dollars more at a theme park just so that they don't have to wait. Why? Because waiting is hard. But at least when you stand in that line at the amusement park, it gives you a guesstimate or an estimate of how long you're going to be waiting, right? Like this wait from this spot is 2 hours. At least you know how long you'll be waiting. Waiting in and of itself is hard enough. But waiting without a clear timeline, that can really feel unbearable. And that's what a lot of you are walking through right now with your fertility journey. You're not only in a waiting season, but you have no idea how long it will be or if it will ever end. So, in this episode, we are going to talk about being in that waiting season and how we can navigate that and pull some biblical knowledge from that situation. We're really going to dive into the story of Abraham and Sarah and how much they had to wait and how they navigated that way in good ways and bad ways, but how the Lord never left through it all. If you've been praying and hoping and doing all of the right things and the months just seem to keep rolling by, you are definitely not alone. Maybe you have been dealing with some internal struggles like jealousy with every new baby announcement, or feeling like maybe God has forgotten you. Maybe you are just wondering if you've missed your moment. You are not alone, and this episode today is for you. God designed your body for fertility, but when the journey to parenthood feels like a heartbreaking mystery, it's so easy to feel lost. I'm Dr. Trisha, a nurse practitioner and fertility consultant who's been where you are. That's why I created Fertility by Design, where faith meets science to empower you with real solutions, holistic healing, and biblical encouragement. You are not alone. Your fertility is not broken. So let's walk this journey together. So in the Bible, in Genesis, in chapter 12, we learn about Abraham, or as he was previously known, Abram, before he was renamed by God. But when we get to chapter 15, Abram is really starting to wonder how God's promise of him being a father to a great nation is going to come true. He says, Abram replied, "O sovereign Lord, what good are all your blessings when I don't even have a son? Since you've given me no children, Eliezer of Damascus, a servant in my household, will inherit all my wealth. You have given me no descendants of my own, so one of my servants will be my heir." Then the Lord said to him, "No, your servant will not be your heir, for you will have a son of your own who will be your heir." Then the Lord took Abram outside and said to him, "Look up into the sky and count the stars if you can. That's how many descendants you will have." And Abram believed the Lord, and the Lord counted him as righteous because of his faith. So the Lord says to him, "No, your servant is not going to be the heir. You are going to have a son." And then he shows him the stars and says that his descendants are going to be as numerous as the stars, which is crazy, I'm sure, for him to imagine in the age that he even was then, that he was going to have a child, but let alone have as many descendants as the stars. What I love about this piece is that he says, and he believed, and then the Lord counted him as righteous for his faith and his belief in what God was telling him. So he believed it. He believed that it was going to happen because God said it. So my first point is, has God spoken to you that you will be a parent? If so, if he's put that on your heart, then you've got to believe that it's done, not through our strength, but through his and through our faith. And so if you've maybe forgotten that, God has given you that desire to be a parent. Now, I'm going to say something that's hard to hear sometimes. Sometimes that doesn't look the way we thought it was going to look. And it maybe doesn't look like getting pregnant on the first try. Maybe it doesn't even look like getting pregnant at all. But if that was laid on your heart, then God will do it and he will give it to you. And it's our job to navigate that and determine exactly what he needs from us, what that plan looks like, and pray over that journey, even though it may not look like what we thought it was going to look like. And that's where many of us are, is that the fertility journey that we are on looks nothing like what we thought it was going to look like. So then later on, we see, of course, that God has promised them a child, and they're waiting, and they're waiting, and they're waiting, and they're still waiting. And Sarah says to Abraham, I think we need to just take this into our own hands. Here is my servant, Hagar. You need to be with her. And when she has a son, then that'll be our son. Okay. So she went and tried to take things and matters into her own hands, tried to force it to make it happen. Does any of this sound familiar? And what happened is then the Lord said, no, that's not it. That ain't it. Like, I'm still going to bless you, even though you tried to take matters into your own hands. But it gave her so much bitterness and resentment because she was in such deep pain because what she wanted so badly, she had not received yet. What that looked like was treating Hagar very, very poorly. And so I think that we can have some of this discord in our relationships with other friends and other couples when we are going through the fertility journey, because it can be really challenging to see other people get pregnant with the dream that we want. It can be really hard when we try to force things and then we see it kind of fall apart on us. We can hold resentment not only against other people, even though we know that that's not fair, but then we resent and we feel guilty ourselves and we shame and blame ourselves for even feeling a certain way towards people initially in our feelings that we have that come up, not wanting it to work out for somebody because we just so desperately want somebody to be going through this pain with us. There's just so many things that we feel that aren't talked about and are really hard to talk about because we're really embarrassed to feel that way. But at the same time, like, if we acknowledge those feelings, they won't own us. We speak them out. Hey, I felt this way for a moment, but that's not how I truly feel. And that's my flesh. I know that I am happy for that person, but I am also mourning a little bit for myself. That's fine. That's normal. We want to acknowledge those feelings and we don't want to live in that deep pain because that is one where the enemy wants us to go. And it's not what God has for us. So despite that little detour in their journey, God still emphasizes faithfulness. He didn't change his mind. He didn't revoke the promise. In chapter 18, they are visited again and told that in about a year, this time, Sarah will have a son. And Sarah literally laughs. She laughs. God says to her, is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return about this time next year and Sarah will have a son. And she doesn't believe it. Abraham still believes it. She's still like, no, I don't really know. I'm not sure this is like ever possible at all. But she has a little faith. She does have a little faith of a mustard seed, but she has some faith. If you think about it, she's probably, like many of us, afraid to even have hope. She's afraid that if she clings to that hope, that there might be disappointment and pain associated with that. But at the end of the day, we have a God that we can trust. And if he's laid that promise on your heart, friend, then he is going to fulfill it one way or another. We don't have to know how it's going to happen. We don't have to know when it's going to happen. And we really don't understand why it has to be this way exactly, but know that he has a plan for you through it. My story is a great example of that. I didn't understand why I was experiencing these losses, but I know now. I know why it was. And I know it's because God used that in my story to bring out a better purpose for me and what I was called to do. And so here I am doing it. But maybe the Lord has a similar story for you, or maybe just your story is meant to help even just one person find healing on their journey. And so You just never know the impact that we are going to have on this side of heaven. Trust me, he does have a plan. So when you're on that monthly roller coaster of follicular phase, ovulation, luteal phase, follicular phase, ovulation, luteal phase, and negative pregnancy tests, supplements, appointments, and still no baby, when you are tempted to do as Sarah did and force the timeline. Maybe you're feeling so much pressure because of your age. You're being really shoved towards IVF and fertility treatments, and it just doesn't sit well with you. Maybe you've been tempted to turn to the quick fixes because that seems a lot more palatable than doing the long-term work of getting to the root cause and healing. And that supplement just sounds so, their marketing team is real good. Maybe you really just start doubting the promise itself and thinking maybe you got your wires crossed and you weren't really sure God actually promised this for you at all, but you know deep down that really it is, but you're just really starting to question it. Maybe you are just emotionally and spiritually exhausted and you are just even questioning where you're at in your faith journey. Maybe your marriage is struggling because of the weight of the fertility journey. But how do we then, amidst all of that, still continue to trust God's timing? And what does that look like? Trust is really not passive, it's active obedience. So what we can do while we're in the wait is be actively stewarding our body with wisdom, with biblical wisdom, caring for ourselves, praying, fasting, fueling our bodies well with good nutrition, taking care of it, moving it, digging to deeper root causes that we know can be addressed through the God-given tools that God has given us, praying boldly and seeking his will for your life and his plan, letting go of the actual outcome of the baby itself and taking aligned action in just stewarding your body well and removing the outcome of a baby and having that, even if you don't, Lord, I still trust you, but I'm going to be active in this moment of wait by taking good care of myself and focusing on you and me and the healing that I have to do and growing closer to you. I encourage you to have a spiritual posture of just belief. It doesn't mean that you don't have moments of unbelief or weakness or doubt. Doubt can be present too, but your belief just needs to be stronger. It says faith like Abraham, yet he did not waver through unbelief, being fully persuaded that God had power to do what he had promised. So it's trusting that God can do it in his power, not in your power. Here's 3 anchors that you can also use while you're in the wait. So the first one being the promise. What has God spoken over your family? Take time this week to pray with your spouse out loud together, journal together. What has God promised you? And if you don't feel like you've clearly gotten an answer from him, pray and ask. Ask God, what is your plan for our family? Where do you see us in 5 years? What would you like us to be doing and pursuing right now? How can we grow closer to you together to strengthen our marriage while on this fertility journey versus let it tear us apart? 2, I want you to reflect together on, are you waiting with a posture of trust or are you waiting with a posture of panic? Are you Google rabbit hole diving all day long, all night long? Are you feeling consistently anxious about where you're at in your journey? Are you feeling like you are trying to control every single aspect with perfection? Do you feel like you have to do everything perfect or else that baby is not going to happen? Or are you trusting God's timing and taking the action that you know you can, using the tools God has given us to heal your own body together in unity, grow closer together, but without that baby being the ultimate ultimatum, right? Is God higher than the baby on your list of things? Are you pursuing God over the baby? Are you just focusing on what you can control so that you are letting God take care of what is ultimately under his control? And then, of course, pace. That God's timing is protection at times. I have many stories where I've heard it didn't happen in the time we thought it would. And now we see why it didn't. And thank God, because that was Him protecting us. And He's using this time to prepare us for something bigger. Maybe you start focusing your prayers on God. What are you preparing us for with this wait season? What am I supposed to learn in this season? We can pray for the baby. Absolutely. Ask God to give you the baby, but also ask God what He's trying to prepare you for in the wait, because you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss what He's trying to teach you in the wait. I'm thankful that even despite my kicking and screaming like a toddler in my wait, that I still learned what I needed to learn to be able to now do what I do, right? And so sometimes even when we're not doing it quite right, we can still glean the wisdom that God was trying to get us at to be able to take us into the next season. So prayer over what God is preparing us for. He's not going to always pull us from the wilderness. The wilderness is such a time of growth for us because we are so reliant on Him when we have nothing else, when we feel everything is out of our control. That's when God is finally like, okay, let's get to work. Now I can work with you, because we finally realize we have no control. And then we lean in to our Lord and Savior. And that's really where the healing starts to begin. I hope this was really helpful to you and that you've gleaned a lot from this conversation. I want to encourage you to reach out. Don't take this journey alone. Use this time as an opportunity to grow together with your spouse. If you are looking for a community to be able to grow together closer with your spouse and get closer to bringing home your baby through faith-based support and science-backed guidance, go ahead and find the link in our show notes to sign up for the waitlist for our couples group program. It's called the Fertility Revival Framework. We're going to be kicking that off in the next couple of months. So if you want to be one of the first people to know and be able to sign up for that group, it's going to be literally life-changing. We are going to take not only a science-backed approach, but we are also going to infuse faith into everything we do. We are going to be focusing on biblical principles to optimizing our fertility and getting you closer to baby and closer to God. So sign up for that in the show notes. We'd also love for you to join our free community on Facebook, Fertility by Design. That group is really meant for you. I have been going live in there covering different topics, and I'm also able to answer any specific questions that you have inside of there. It's really just a place for you to get further support and be in a like-minded community. So don't hesitate to join that group. We would love to have you inside. Once you join, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from and how long you've been on your fertility journey, and anything else you'd like to share. We are here for you. That group is to support you. So as we wrap up, let's reflect that God had Sarah and Abraham name their son Isaac, which meant laughter. Sarah laughed when God fulfilled His promise. And maybe when God fulfills your promise, you will too, because you will be able to look back and it will all make sense. But let's not stop short. We are going to trust Him or bust. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope you all have a blessed week, and I will see you back here next week. That's it for today's episode of Fertility by Design. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a review to help more couples find hope, and share this with a friend who needs encouragement on their fertility journey. Need even more support? Let's connect. Find me on Instagram at Trisha Zehrung for faith-filled fertility guidance, real solutions, and a community that just understands. Remember, your fertility is not broken. Your body is beautifully and wonderfully designed, and God's plan is always perfect. I'll see you next time.